Hi. We're way back here in the back.
That's their own fault.
That's
They didn't
fine.
want to be down on the floor.
Stars of the show here. All right, guys, welcome back. So today we are going to be talking about the Dynastic Cycle. This is lesson 2. Oh, okay. What? Now it matters because stable government builds solid growth and strength in a civilization. So get yourself prepared. There is some, what is going on back here?
I don't know. Welcome to my life.
Okay, let's just, here we go. Come on in. Let's just, no. All right, guys, just prepare yourself. Here we go. Get started. What?
All right, guys, one of the first things we want to talk about today is the dynastic cycle. So I'm going to give you just a minute. If you don't have a pencil or you're not ready, I hope that you are ready. Please go get that, because this is an important concept that we're going to talk about a lot of the things that we've already talked about in our previous notes, and we're going to wrap some things up and pull it all together. So the two dynasties that we've talked about so far, the Shang and the Zhou dynasty, those are Zhou, as we're pronouncing that, the Shang and the Zhou dynasties. The Shang was the very first dynasty in China, and they built a strong civilization, and they had warlords that were starting to control the outer provinces. And then when the Zhou took over, they did the exact same thing. Now, the Zhou are the ones who came up with the mandate of heaven, and they said that the gods are now favoring us, and now we are in charge. And that makes perfect sense that they would come up with this, because they're the ones now in charge, and they want the rest of the people in their civilization to think that they are the rightful people to be in charge. They just conquered the previous dynasty, and so in order to put themselves in a position of power, they told everybody that the mandate of heaven was something that the gods had sent down, and they had the mandate of heaven. Well, when the mandate of heaven hits a particular dynasty or hits a particular leader, that means the mandate of heaven had to leave a different leader. And so what they decided was to explain this and to have themselves be the people in power. They came up with something called the Dynastic Cycle. And it looks like dynasty, and that's what we're going to talk about. So a strong leader comes onto the scene, and they're going to establish peace. And it's thought because the mandate of heaven is upon him. The gods have shown favor on this guy, and that's why he could conquer the one before, because the gods no longer like the previous leader. Now it's their turn. And in time, the dynasty is going to grow larger. The people are going to follow him. They're going to develop more roads. They're going to have a better infrastructure. And remember, when we talk infrastructure, that's the word that means that we have good roads, we have good communication, our people are being fed, we have ways of distributing our surplus to the people who need that. So the infrastructure is strong, and they grow larger. There might be a disaster like an earthquake or a famine or revolt, and if that happens, it's because the leader probably has done something that he shouldn't, and the gods are not completely happy with them. And the old dynasty is seen to start losing the mandate of heaven. And when your country or your civilization faces a disaster like that, they become weaker. So, as always, your enemies are watching, and so if you're getting weaker, that is a time when someone else can come in and take over your position. So the natural disasters are earthquakes, floods, famines, or even a revolt. If that revolt is successful, then that means that that particular leader is starting to lose the favor of the gods, and the old dynasty is starting to lose power. So the dynasty is lost through rebellion. The people may have just had enough and don't want to deal with that anymore, and they revolt against that leader. Or the new dynasty that's coming in, the new leader, may be so strong that the previous dynasty cannot defend itself. And if that happens, it's the man's fault. It's the leader's fault, because the mandate of heaven has left him. The gods, for whatever reason, do not feel that he's worthy to be in charge anymore, and so the dynasty begins to fall. The new person steps up, and a new dynasty takes over and gains power, restores order, and brings everybody back under control. No more revolts. Everybody's going to be peaceful again. We have a new leader who stepped out on top, and that new leader has now, isn't that funny? That's the mandate of heaven coming down and giving him favor. And so now the mandate of heaven is now with the new guy who's in charge. And then the cycle is going to start all over again. So when we talk terms of civilizations, we always want to talk about who has the power and how did they get it, and what are they going to do with it when they have it. And so the dynastic cycle explains who has the power, how did they get it, what are they going to do with it, and what's going to happen. And it's going to follow this cycle over and over, because the Chinese dynasties that we're looking at were very polytheistic. There's a lot of gods that are going to have control over certain things in different ways, and so the gods are very much a big part of what they believe and what they think. So therefore, this dynastic cycle, this whole circle of events here that we're talking about, really helps explain what's going on. And so we don't want to lose the mandate of heaven. Now, in this part of the cycle right here, if the disaster is small, or if it's a small famine and they're able to recover, they say that the mandate of heaven didn't leave. It was just kind of testing that leader, and then he made some good decisions and he came out on top. And so it can be restored. So he's still a strong leader. It goes back to here and it can start over. They can continue to grow. But eventually it always happens that we're going to complete this cycle until we get this new leader. So make sure all of your blanks are filled in. Now the hot question is coming next. Please, you know what? You guys know the drill. I shouldn't have to beg you to do this. Do it right. You know what it's about. You know how to do this. Make me proud. Make yourself proud. Make your answers be good so that we can tell exactly that you know what you're talking about and that we can see you grow. Come on, show us what you got. All right, I love you guys. Have a great day.
Time for your first hot question. Explain how the ancient Chinese idea of the mandate of heaven is related to the dynastic cycle. Think of the things that Ms. Hodges just explained to you. Make sure you answer this hot question in detail and in full sentences. Write something that you would be proud to show us, and we will see you next time.
Now, guys, when we look at China, we know we have some very important dynasties, and we briefly talked about these in our lesson 1 notes, but in these notes, we're going to get a little bit more in depth into some of the important leaders and accomplishments of each of these big 4 dynasties. So, as we go, some of this information you already have on your chart, some of them you're going to need to fill in. So, please be sure that you are filling in and listening carefully, circling things as we ask you to, all that good stuff. We're going to start just like we did on our lesson 1 notes with the Shang dynasty. And this dynasty was active 1766 BC to 1045 BC. So if we do our elapsed time, that's right about 700 years that we're looking at. Very long dynasty. And some of the important leaders that we saw, and these are the same that we saw when we looked at them in our lesson 1 notes. We have our kings, our warlords, and then our aristocrats, okay? And then we know down below that, if we're going to make this like our little social hierarchy here, it's not very good, Pyramid, sorry, we would also have peasants and farmers further on down the list, okay? I hope you guys are noticing at this point that this social hierarchy is the same in a lot of the civilizations that we've seen. Some of the accomplishments over in the Shang dynasty, our first dynasty, of course, they had those oracle bones, those turtle shells and other things that they would throw into the fire and interpret as messages from the gods. And they also had pictographs and ideographs, rather. Now, pictographs is a written language where each symbol represents a concrete idea. So like a dog or a house, something that can be represented physically. An ideograph represents some sort of concept like love or family or peace, something like that. And so we also see in the Shang dynasty the development of bronze. So we've got some really advanced metalworking, okay? So we've got a written language, we've got religion, we've got metalworking, lots of advanced technologies there. Then the Zhou dynasty, I always love saying that. Remember that this is our oldest and longest, or not our oldest, but our longest dynasty. Wu Wang was the very first leader of the Zhou dynasty. He was the one who took over from the Shang dynasty. We have bureaucracy. Remember, bureaucracy is that organization of government officials. Don't forget, and I want you to put a big star here, or you guys already have a star, but I want you to circle this, all of this. Remember that the reason that this dynasty was able to last for so long was this concept of the mandate of heaven. Y'all, this is so important. I want arrows, I want stars, circle this. You need to know about the mandate of heaven, okay? This idea that the ancient Chinese believed that the gods were chosen, or rather that the gods chose the leaders. And as Miss Hodges explained, there was a whole cycle. In order to fulfill the mandate of heaven, you had to be a good leader. And then the ancient Chinese believed that if you displeased the gods, you could be replaced as a leader. And then a new leader would fulfill that mandate of heaven. So please, please, please be sure you know this concept. Now, there's two other big dynasties we want to talk about here. The next is the Qin dynasty. Now, I know it's pronounced, or it looks like it's got the Q there, but it is Qin. And in fact, this is where we get the name China from, because the leader of the Qin dynasty, Qin Shi Huangdi, and you'll notice from 221 to 206 BCE, this dynasty is probably the shortest that we'll see. Let me erase that. One's not very good. Okay? This dynasty is the shortest that we're going to see, but what he did was that he united China, and he ruled through these very swift, harsh punishments. And so everybody was kind of afraid of him. He did make a unified currency throughout China, and he built the Great Wall. So in that period of 15 years, he accomplished a lot, but he was incredibly harsh. And I want you to write that word, harsh. Oh, please have better handwriting than mine. Mine's really bad.
Please.
Okay. Oh, no, Miss Luce isn't being sassy today. All right, please write that word harsh in there, okay? We'll talk a little bit more about the Great Wall and some of those accomplishments in class, but we know that that's a gigantic accomplishment. You could still go visit that today. But he definitely was not a nice guy. In fact, the soldiers and prisoners building the Great Wall, if one got sick or died, they just built him into the wall, okay? They wouldn't even stop to have a funeral or anything. Too bad. Throw him in the pit, all right? Not a nice guy. And so we see his dynasty did not last too long because people rebelled against that harsh rule. And they thought that he was not fulfilling the mandate of heaven because he was such a harsh ruler. The last dynasty we're going to look at is also another long-lasting dynasty from 206 BCE to 581 BCE. This is the Han dynasty. And its greatest leader was Han Wudi. And so we see several things here. We see this idea of civil service. That's kind of like our bureaucracy up here in the Zhou dynasty, where it became very important to have a government role. And in fact, you would even have to take tests to get government jobs. And we'll learn more about that in our next part of studying China. He also helped to expand the empire, and he expanded trade. I want you to circle where it says Silk Road for me right here. And we're going to learn more about the Silk Road. We actually have a great DBQ we're going to do and a lot of fun projects with this. But for now, we need to know that the Silk Road was a network of trade routes, and it connected China all the way from the Pacific Ocean all the way through India, Mesopotamia, and even into places like Egypt, Greece, and Rome, okay? Because we see that the Han Dynasty was powerful right about the same time that Greece and Rome were powerful. So we're going to see more of that Silk Road soon, okay? Now, y'all were very, very concerned last time we had notes, or 2 times ago when we had notes, that there were no hot questions. Guess what? We have 2 this time. We listened to you. Don't ever think we don't love you. We care about what you have to say, and we wanted to make sure we made up for that hot question y'all missed. So here's Miss Lewis with that hot question.
All right, guys. Yes, another one. So here's your next hot question. Out of all of the accomplishments that Ms. Todrick just discussed, what do you think has had the strongest impact on your life and why? Don't forget, you should be answering these. We are at a point in the year where we are all capable of answering the hot question thoroughly and completely. Okay? Good luck.
Okay, your first hot question
Explain how the ancient Chinese idea of the mandate of heaven is related to the dynastic cycle. Think about the stuff that Miss Hodges just told you about. It didn't work.